Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to this week's Matrexit discussion group call for tactical sovereignty. Like I say, this beautiful first day of the week, Sunday, not the 7th, so probably not the Sabbath either, but the first day of the week, Sunday. And tonight we've got with us Trey Smith. And one of the reasons why, I was telling Trey earlier, one of the reasons why I've always appreciated him is because he gets deeper into scripture rather than just looking at the surface level, getting really into the original language, looking at the real meaning, and it really brings things more to life and makes a whole lot more sense. And I wish more pastors did that today. I might not refer to them as churchianity as much as I do if they were to do that, but this is episode 321, which is kind of a countdown, and we're looking at a countdown right now, and a lot of things are unfolding and opening up and coming to light. And so, Trey, how are you doing this evening? Thanks for being here.
Well, it's an honor to be with you tonight, and I thank you for I thank you for writing, and it's an honor to be on with you.
Absolutely love having you here. And I think, I really want to introduce the people that are in this audience that don't know you, check out your body of work. And you've got some things coming forward that is new to the information that you're generally sharing. And I think I'm just going to sit back and let you roll with that.
Well, okay. So what I'm hoping to have up in the next couple of days will be I've been working on putting together a stronger presentation. So a good number of years ago, quite a few years ago now, we did a film called Noah, and in its time, it was probably the strongest. Well, in my view, that I had done on Noah. And at this point, I'd like to really update that, and I'd also like to put some focus on a couple of different sites. And one of those sites is the Drupanar, what's known as the Drupanar site. It's named the Drupanar site after Ilhan Drupanar, who was a Turkish pilot that did air patrols in the sky. And so he photographed this. And this was, I think, in roughly 1959. And this was a photograph that, back then, this was a photograph that made the rounds and got people very excited because it's right in the area. It's shaped like a boat, man. So if you fast forward to today, a friend of mine and the guys at Discovered Media, and by the way, they do tours of that site and also of the split rock that's out there in Saudi Arabia, and the real Mount Sinai tours and this kind of a thing. But anyhow, Andrew runs that visitor center. He's one of the men that redid their visitor center for the Drupanar site. That site is officially recognized by the Turkish government as being Noah's Ark. Now, I'm not willing to commit to that myself at this point. What I am willing to state is that, well, what Andrew would like to do is core drilling at this point to see what's underneath. If you were a detective looking at something, you would try to alleviate the suspects, if you will. And this particular site over the years, and there's been a lot of Christians that have badmouthed the site over the years, largely because they for whatever cause, they didn't like Ron Wyatt. But the more that site has been looked at with better equipment, the more it doesn't get alleviated as a suspect. It begins looking more and more impressive, which is the point that we're at. And in fact, the last set of scans, which I have, that Andrew has done, and these guys have spent a lot of time, a lot of very top-notch equipment, and a lot of funding doing this stuff. It takes a lot of men to go out there and do, I mean, it's enormous amounts of work. There are grid-like patterns. Excuse me. There are grid-like patterns inside. It looks like a structure going down under there, and more than looks like a structure, you look at it and you say, "My gosh, that looks like a boat under there." He'd like to look at it more, and I would like to do the best job I can in presenting what he and his team have found to date. And I hope I do a good job on that. I think that I will. Excuse me, but we should have that up. We should have that up in the next couple of days. And it looks really well. I hope it looks impressive. It looks pretty good to me. It's a good presentation to me. And the thing we're working on more than that probably people want to hear about, are I've been kind of quiet on the um, on the Trump stuff for a couple of years, and I think the Lord did that. There were times that I had wanted to jump out there and just say some things, and I'm glad in retrospect that I didn't. I'd like to put together a very careful, and I'm working on it. I've got a bunch of his stuff timelined out, and in my opinion, there are markers in those prophecies. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So Kim talked numerous points about the war in Ukraine, and that it would be Russia that would go in there. He talked about Russia moving further into the NATO nations, causing trouble with those. I want to be careful how I phrase that at this moment. But see, those will, and by the way, there's no way that you would have known that. So this amongst lists of other things where he talked about the impeachment. This is going to be tied to Trump, and he talks about it 2 times. And again, I had thought that he was just I was shocked they did one impeachment. But then when I saw those in the prophecies, not only did he have it in there, he had it in there twice. And he kept talking about China. I think China is a real big problem and player in all of these things that are coming and that are on the horizon. But he did do a lot of talk about Russia, and he also talked about joy would come out of the ashes of the Ukraine. And he talked about some kind of dark times. He did say that Donald Trump would have 2 terms in office. And I don't know precisely the path to that. There's some very unique things in those prophecies. And I think here at the part that we're at, just sort of like that Noah's Ark site, you begin with a scan and it kind of looks good. And then you have some more scans and you can see a little more. The same thing with these things. As time has gone by, you can clearly see some of the elements that are there, and they're in order. And he did lots of these prophecies. So you'll have, for example, this tape, and you'll have this tape, and you'll have this tape, and you can kind of timeline out where you're at in it. And the good news is this, that on the other side of a lot of kind of heavy and dark stuff, not just for the United States, but for the world, there not just good days ahead, but incredible days ahead for the United. There's going to be a global awakening, and there already is a global awakening. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Yes, so that's what we've been. Yes, so that's what we've been working on over at God. That's what I've been working. That was what I was working on before I was actually working on it when I came over to do this recording with you. So, the number one thing to me, one of the giant things, more than telling you that that Trump will probably go back in. He will go back in. That's what's in there. There's no way. I also want to do that when I lay out the prophecy thing. I'm numbering the prophecies so that way even the most hardened skeptic or atheist would look at the prophecies being presented and know that there's something highly unusual happening here at bare minimum. And that in some form or another, what's being said in those words will come to fruition. But more importantly than telling you there are wonderful days ahead, there are after some really dark things that are coming. So, just in my view, based on what's in those prophecies and what I sort of see happening in the world. More importantly than that, to me, is to bring those biblical pages to life to people, and also to excite them about some of these sites that have still got big question marks on them. There's a lot of mysteries there. We don't know exactly. It would be exciting and fun to know quite a number of things that are out there that men are working on. One are what's underwater on the Red Sea. There's more work that needs to be done on that. I know the right guys that are working on that. They could use help, by the way. The the droop in our site, it needs to be determined whether that is the boat or if it's not the boat, or if the boat is up there on top of the mountain. And by the way, you're living in an hour of history where you can answer that question, where even if it's up encapsulated in that ice, it's no cakewalk, but you are living in hours of history where it could be determined. If there's a ship remaining up there on top of that mountain. And these are the kind of things that aren't just exciting, but they give people hope in look, man, this stuff these things that we've believed, you and I have believed, whoever you are listening to this show, turn out to be real. Sometimes they're different than we thought they were, but they do turn out to be real and correct. And that includes, in my very strong view, the prophetic words that the Lord gave to Kim Clement. And he died about the time of the election of Donald Trump. And as horrible as this is to say, I believe it was the Lord that took him, because it made those prophecies that you only have those. And in my opinion, those prophecies go at least a little ways beyond 2027, but at least that far. And I'm going to kind of present that out as well, the best that I can. But those words that he had are, he's not here to answer questions about them. But we can look at them and tell that we're walking through those hours. And that's something that I hope gives people a lot of courage. You're still there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that, Trey. I agree 100% with you. It's interesting to me, a lot of the things that I thought or felt or believed, whenever anybody wants to put it, when I was younger, that there really wasn't any evidence for, and things that I didn't see line up quite exactly the way they were presented to me in scripture. And I thought they were a little different. There's things coming out today that are exposing that, different archaeological finds and things like that, that are lining right up with hunches that I had in the past. And so you're right, the technology and things that we have are really going to, I think, open people's eyes. And there's definitely a wealth of knowledge being spread today, more so than ever.
So there's also, yes, and I think people are also seeing a very real spiritual war. For example, excuse me. For example, I heard today that the Ukraine has been doing, Zelensky and Ukraine have been doing raids on Orthodox Christian churches there in Ukraine. I don't know what the reason for that is. It was something that Donald Trump Jr. had tweeted out, but and I'm not sure their claimed reason for doing that. But I also heard today that and this one I just heard a few hours before coming on with you. So I'd have to look more at it and make sure what I'm telling you is accurate. But one of the lead prosecutors out there in the UK has issued a statement saying that reading the Bible openly or out loud is inappropriate, I think was the phrasing that I heard. So you're coming, and this is what was coming here. So what was coming here was a far cry from looking at Kim Clement prophecies or going to figure out if Noah's Ark is here or is it over here, or can we even find it today. What was headed our direction and still is. You can see where this was going. And I believe that those attacks are what you're seeing is the heart of it. Because there's no. It was very telling to me when I saw a few hours ago that Zelensky was performing raids on Orthodox churches, and he's of course claiming that the Russians are working through those or something. But I know little about it. But what I can tell you is that when we're doing raids on, that's how it starts. And when you've got the UK stating that it's inappropriate to read the Bible out loud. This was what was coming our direction in the United States, and in a preview, if you will, of coming attractions. And if you use the same mix, you'll get the same cake. And that was what was happening here. And I just strongly believe, now you're seeing in the course of that a lot of encouraging stuff. I believe that the Lord has put men in place that are, and a lot of them are kind of off the wall characters here, there, and yonder. But even when they don't know that the Lord is using them, the Lord is using them. And you're going to have victory. Kim said about this United States, he said, you will be humbled and yet some more. And I've heard people for 2 years now say, Trey, are we to the and some more part yet? And unfortunately, I think the answer is we're not yet. You're going to know that it's like so when the Israelites were at the Red Sea, they thought that they had lost. And I unfortunately, I had this horrible, it's not a horrible feeling. I think that's might be the way it looks in this situation, that we get to a point in this where before there's shouts of great victory, even the people that were against us are going to say, we just need a way out. And so we're going to pray for that and agree for it. And by the way, that has to happen to do a lot of these archaeological things and a lot of these other things. America has to be in a position where, it has to be in a position of strength again to even attempt to go and look for some of these different artifacts in a real way. Right now, the United States has no credibility in the world and no standing in the world. And that doesn't mean you couldn't go visit the sites, but to really go look at something seriously like Ararat or any of these other sites, I believe we're going to come into hours where those things, where the name "I'm an American" actually means something again, and also holds clout with those countries where those artifacts are. They're not the peachiest spots, though. They're very difficult to get to.
Well, as far as reputation of the USA, it's going to take a little bit of mending and fixing of things that have been done the past several years. I think it's interesting when you look over history. It seems like when nation goes against nation, they always go after the God of the nation. And when you're talking about going after the Orthodox churches, I would presume that would be the Russian Catholic Orthodox Church is what he's going after.
Well, to go after churches in general, whatever the argument is of it, that's where it starts, man. And so, and I, in a larger sense, I believe there's a spirit behind all of it. So there's just it appears to me there's a lot of wickedness there. I don't know what the haze of it is, and Putin is no Betty Crocker either. But there's something that's been happening, and this is what Kim was stating, even way back in 2015. He said, out of this rebellious country that does all these rebellious things, and I'm going to be careful how I couch that, or because I also don't know. But he said that joy would come out of those ashes. And it looks to me more and more like there's something seriously wrong going on there. And but I think these presentations, and a lot of them that we've been doing, one of my goals has been over the last couple of years to make these presentations the most credible looking and to be more concise than I was in the past with arguments that I know are sound on things that are far harder to defeat, and to also present them nicer. And some of the evidence I've got for some of the different things is better than I had back then. So go ahead.
I think it's interesting in the same vein as far as looking at them go after the different gods. Even here several years ago, when we saw different statues being taken down across the USA in different cities. Even here, Lee County, Florida, there was a statue of Robert E. Lee they wanted taken down. And at that same time, without mentioning the C word, in Asia, they were doing the same thing and taking down statues of the Buddha and other holy relics. So it wasn't just an isolated incident. This was happening globally or
Yeah.
worldwide, whichever way you want to look at it. So when people want to think, a one world religion, one world government, well, guess what? All the things we've been seeing the past couple of years has been going on everywhere. It has not been isolated.
Yeah. Yes. It was. It kind of looks like it was a takeover. Um, I think that the spirit behind this, if you will, at least for the United States, did not want us to have a memory of those statues represent. Um, they represent our heritage. They represent what America stands for. So what they were doing was chipping away at all of the things that represent freedom. So on the other side of it, there wouldn't be anything that represents freedom, and there wouldn't be a memory of it. And they were also making lots of using their medias to produce lots of materials that would mess people's minds up. Well, they don't really understand anything anyway. They've got so no structure can exceed the strength of its foundation, its grounding. And if you can remove that from a set of people, if you can take their foundation away, now you can control them. And so, yeah, you may be in World War III right now. It's a strange war, but I don't think we're at the end yet. That doesn't make me right, but that's just not what I feel in my spirit. What my mother used to tell me is she said people would rush to the end times, and you're going to get those. But she would say, don't forget about the harvest. The Lord is going to have a harvest. And the term that people use right now is a global awakening. And you can kind of visibly see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'd be remiss also to not forget the words of Roosevelt when he said that nothing in government happens on accident. Everything is planned. So when we see these things, we can't just, imagine that, oh, these are just organic events. No, things are planned out step by step. They know what's going on.
Right. Well, I tell you what, you have a very good night tonight, and it's just been an honor talking to you. And I thank you for having me on the show this evening.
Hey, it's a pleasure having you here, Trey, and I hope people go and check you out. I'm looking forward to this new information that you're planning on coming out with, and people can look here on YouTube when this goes up. Down in the description box down below, there will be a link for Trey's channel there, and I really recommend people go. And if you're anything like me, you'll end up finding yourself binge watching maybe some playlists or something.
Well, God bless you very much, and I thank you for the kind words. And I hope that I hope that these things are worthy of you guys. I think they are going to. I think that this one that I'm working on right in here in the other room is. I think it's not just good. I think it's a lot of fun. So I think you guys will really like them.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here, Trey. And like I remind people every week, if you want to learn anything at all, learn who you really are, where you're really from, and where you're really at, because that's constantly being hidden from you, constantly being chipped away, like Trey said. Thanks, guys.
All right. Okay. God bless.